Hello, everyone. I am just setting up. If you're watching a replay, say hey. Let us know where you're from. Just giving Instagram a chance to go. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Clay, for spending some time with me. We are going to get into your journey, especially as it relates to the Finish Your Dissertation Institute. But I just want to say I am just so excited. I've been looking forward to this all morning, like really all like month. Because I just really want to dive into, especially like the beginning part of your story, but I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Let's please introduce yourself for the folks before I bombard you with all the questions.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. We've had to reschedule, but I'm happy we can make it work. So I'm Janelle Clay, newly minted Dr. Janelle Clay. I'm here in Atlanta, just finished the EPS Educational Policy Studies program at Georgia State University. Right now, professionally, I'm a senior research associate at Education Development Center, which is a global research and evaluation firm situated in Waltham, Massachusetts. So I'm excited to be here.
Oh, excited to have you. And y'all, like, that's just a very brief bio of all the things that she does in a regular day. Okay, I think about you often, like when I grow up. That is what I want to be. I'm so serious. I'm like, I don't know. It's different when you're watching people from the outside looking in, right? And from my experience of you, it's just like we got to get done what needs to get done. Let's keep this simple. Let's not get caught up in the emotional parts of it. And move forward. And I'm sure you may say something different, but like based on that, would you describe overall your doctoral process like that? Before we get to the dissertation, was it pretty much like, I'm coming here, I'm going to do these classes, I'm going to do what they're asking me to do, and I'm going to move on? Or how would you describe your coursework?
It was very much that. I made the decision, and I was very fortunate to know my advisor ahead of time and a lot of the staff. And so it was very much, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it as in as least amount of time as possible. I'm going to just follow the program. They have a document that says you take these courses at this point in time. And if it's a plan, why veer away from the plan, right? If it doesn't work, and the way that it was structured worked for me. And this is all pre-pandemic, which probably matters a little bit.
Yeah. How did things change, if at all? I'm assuming they did, but like, how did they change as we started to go into the pandemic?
Sure. So the beginning of the program, even though I was only part-time, we did not have a cohort program, but being on campus, you start to develop relationships with classmates, right? Those that were there before, those that are coming in new, coming in behind you. So I think going into the pandemic, that relationship building was different, right? And so I think some of us made an effort to participate in the Graduate Student Association or go to the networking events virtually. But I think that really affected the depth of the relationships that we were building, to the point where I was at a conference, this is post-pandemic, at a conference, and I see someone wearing a name tag from Georgia State University. I was like, oh, I go to Georgia State University as well. And we looked at each other's program. We're like, oh, we're in the same program and had some of the same classes, right? And so that kind of, because we weren't in the hallways or going in person to to different events, just losing that connection, I think, was the biggest thing. And of course, working, I had a kid at the time, so I had to just reduce the course number of courses I was taking. So that, I think that was much of I have no control over this. The relationship part, I think, was the most affected me the most, but the pace that I can do it, it was out of my control. So I really fret over it, you know?
Yeah. And it's making me think about like just the different identities we're constantly like navigating through life. And you just mentioned like I had one child at that point, and you have two now, and being partner, married, and also like navigating your role as student, as friend, you know, co-student. what were some of the things in the layer of the pandemic? Like, what were some of the things that were keeping you going? Because I guess at the beneath that question is, I'm trying to get. It's one thing to say I want to go after a
Mhm.
PhD. I want to, and you when you don't know, you're like, oh, it's so exciting. Like I want to do the thing. But then when you get into it and you understand the realities of what it requires on your time, your energy, and then you add in a pandemic, I guess I'm getting more at like, how did you keep going?
I'm very practical in some ways, right? Like at that point, I'm 2.5 years in. Right?
Mm,
We're closer to the end than I was to the beginning, right? And
yeah.
so I think for me processing it, it was I've already made so many sacrifices up to this point. Walking away for a job or for stability would not have said that those sacrifices were worth it.
Mhm.
I don't think I had a red line per se of when I would say this is enough, I can't do it anymore. But I just knew that I had a good support system. My husband, my mom, and mother-in-law, they made it manageable. And so up until a point where it's like this can't happen anymore. I can't
Mm,
do it. Um, I think I was too far in by the
yeah.
time the pandemic happened, and the expectation that it was going to be hard. So this feels hard was what I expected. Um, but it still felt like I can push through.
Yeah.
I don't think I hit that wall up until like the last month or two that I was like, I have nothing else to give. Yeah.
Mhm. Mm. A practical approach in accepting that it's gonna be hard and leaning on your community,
Mhm.
your mother-in-law, your husband, like, I'm sure a slew of friends and other family members. Um, what started to, I guess, change or be different as you started to get into the dissertation process?
I didn't know what I was doing.
Mhm.
I think there wasn't a plan, right? So coursework, there was a very clear take these courses in this trajectory, right? First year in, you need to take these required courses, and then you can build your program. You can build your program out after that. Getting into the writing phase, I also
Mhm.
came in with an interest area, right? So I've been writing up to that point around this interest area. But getting into comps and having to, provide those questions to my committee, that felt a little bit uncertain. Like, are these the right questions? Are these robust enough? Are they critical enough? Are they important enough? And is this the way that I'm supposed to be writing? I think knowing how to answer those questions was not, it wasn't clear, right? And I think that was the hardest part, was just saying, okay, I'm going to just write. I'm going to write without an outline. I'm going to write without a plan. Whatever is in my head, I'm going to find somebody to support it, and I'm going to put it on paper. I mean, I don't think that was the right way to approach it, or it took longer doing it that way than now. I know there's a process for
Mm,
dissertation that
mhm.
is not just chaos.
And because you're speaking a lot about like, and I know you to be someone practical, like, I just tell me what to do, I'll do the things, I can figure a lot of stuff out. What contributed you getting to the point where you're like, okay, I see this woman online, she's talking about some finish your dissertation type institute, I'm a join. How do you get there, right? And I'm asking this question because there are people right now in this moment who have been following me for weeks, months, what have you. And the thing that is stopping them is feeling like I can't get additional help outside of my chair, my program, because it's either like cheating or it would be proof that I don't have what it takes to do this. And if I can't do it alone, like, is it real? Kind of like, like in sorority fraternity life where it's like, are you paper? Because you just like somebody just helped you to get through.
Mhm.
Uh, and like the conversations you have to have with yourself to reach out and accept outside help that you're gonna pay for. Like what? So like how like could you describe what that was like for you?
Sure. So at that, obviously I'm going into the writing process, so stopping isn't an option, right? And
Mhm.
I did not want to time out. So either I'm going to just keep doing it my way, which is chaos and just writing, and insecurities about showing my drafts to my chair, or I have to do something different. right? And so I think I became familiar with your work maybe like let's say 6 to 12 months before I joined. I just kind of saw some of the resources. I also knew that my approach is not to go on YouTube and watch something. I just don't have that's just not what
Mhm.
feels right to me.
Mhm.
So I did not tap into the resources in a way that would have been useful. I think having been working on the first 3 chapters for let's say October until maybe June, July, I was like, I'm not making progress, right? Like I don't want to share my draft with my chair because I don't think it's good enough. I don't know what's supposed to go into a lit review because that's not something that's taught per se. Um, and I just don't know what to do. So I think at that point, you had your lit review 90 days in, your lit review in 90 days. And that just seemed like it made sense, right? So if we're in summer, this is going to take me until the beginning of the fall, and then I can move forward with my actual with prospectus and moving that forward. So I think it was just kind of realizing that I'm stuck, and
Mhm.
I don't like being stuck, and I didn't know how to figure it out.
Mhm.
And so that was really the turning point. And I would say if you know yourself, you know when you're getting to that point, right? So kind of have that pause, do that reflection. What's the trade-off? So if I raise my hand and I say I'm struggling here, either your committee or your program are going to be able to provide you with resources to help you get unstuck, or you have to go someplace else. And I don't think many of us have close friends that have done this and can provide us with this specific type of support. So you have to find that community, right? We all hope that would be free, but we acknowledge your role in this. Um, but you have to find that community, whether it's a writing group or whether it's this very structured program that gives you very clear guidelines and timelines. I think you have to make that decision.
Mm. Now I want to go back to the you who joined, and I'm smiling, y'all, because I'm just all the memories are coming up. I'm sure you had, some preconceived ideas of what it might be like or what you hoped it would be like to be in the community. I guess how did those ideas evolve as you started to come in, join the cause, utilize the resources, be with the other folks in the group?
I didn't know what I was doing, right? So I don't think I had an idea of what this would be or should be. And so I think
Mhm.
that's maybe why it worked for me, right? Like I was
Mhm.
just if you were to say, you need to like do 5 jumping jacks and turn it in, I'd have been like, okay, here are my 5 jumping jacks. I'm gonna turn it in.
Yeah.
I did not know what I was supposed to do. And so I think this offered a space that said, you don't have to be perfect, right? No one's writing something on the first draft that's going to get approved. So send the email, right? Like I think at that point I had probably the kitchen sink written,
Mhm.
and you're like, just send the email. Like, what's the worst that can happen at this point in time? And I think that just hearing that over and over and over enough times, and kind of going back through, you have a very clear kind of outline or template for what you should do, especially at the lit review stage. Um, it's like, okay, go back through it. Did you do this? Yes. Do you have these? Yes. Okay,
Mhm.
send it. Um,
Mhm.
and so just that prompt, just send it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say this, I just have these memories of being on a call and I would listen to you, let me back up to say one of the things I really appreciated about you is like you would come to the call, you like raise your hand and you say, here's what's going on. This is what I've been working on. I'm trying to do this, help.
Hmm.
And it was just very much like an openness of to what you just said, like, right, whatever you say, I'm gonna just do the thing because I just need a process and I'm gonna do it. And me, like, I'm gonna give you the process, but I also just was like, you need a push. Because if you don't have this push, my hunch was like you would keep overthinking it. And I was like, she's doing it. She just doesn't know she's doing it. But if she turns it in and talks to her chair, she'll see what I'm seeing on this side. And I just remember, like, yeah, we're gonna do this proposal. Like, let's just be done with it in a very short amount of time. And I do remember your face, but I also remember you being like, okay, I don't all the way believe you, but I'm
How
gonna
much you
show up
say?
and do the things.
I'm gonna you tell me to do it in, 10 hours a week. I don't think your estimate is right. But if you say 10 hours, let me
Yeah,
go ahead and map out my 10 hours and do what you say to do and just and turn it in. And I think the overthinking is where I got, you kind of you run away from yourself, right? You're over here and wondering if you're good enough, or is this even the right question?
yeah,
I'm interpreting this, this body of research correctly. And I think just saying, okay, well, this is the plan, and up until someone says no, you're doing the right thing. And I think that was a push that the community provided. Of course, like having just carving out time to listen to what other folks are dealing with and learning from their experiences helped. But you have a plan, like
you
you
have a
told us
plan.
what to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to double down on something because people ask me all the time, they're like, "That 10 hours is just marketing, right? It's just marketing. It's just what you're saying." And right, and I try to explain to people, like, "No, for the most part, you are doing 10 hours. You're probably doing less than 10 hours because life is
Hmm.
probably only when you are working towards, your defenses in 3 weeks, 4 weeks that you may go over it
Hmm.
slightly. But if you're working with a clear plan, in my world, it shouldn't take more than 10 hours. Anything that you would say to that, yeah, like, in terms of your experience of using the 10 hours in the plan?
I think if you, I don't know if that's, I don't know, 10 hours seems really light.
I know.
But it's doable, right?
Mhm.
If you're able to set your Pomodoro clock and you say, this is my time, right? I'm
Yeah,
going to write for this 25-minute block, and I'm going to just keep doing it. Whether you have a 2 hours per day or 3 hours per day loop, whatever your thing is. I get easily distracted. I'm like, oh, there's a bird. Oh, there's my phone. So I think, of course, it takes us longer, but I think if you are able to say, I'm going to block out the noise for,
yeah.
this period of time, makes sense. Also, know yourself. Like if you can only do an hour in the morning, just do an hour, right? Instead of thinking that you should be doing more, or trying to sit down at your desk for an 8 hour, 10 hour day. That's not going to, you may be working for 10 hours, but you're not producing good work or quality work during that time period. So I think just again, how are you approaching the work? What makes sense? It's like how we choose to work out or get into
Mm,
space. Right? Why set your clock for 4 o'clock in the morning, knowing that you are better off at a 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. workout, or even, pausing work at lunchtime and going to work out. Find a schedule and a rhythm that works for you that you can be consistent with.
mm.
Maybe 10 hours you can keep it within that 10-hour timeline.
Yeah, I love that you talked about, getting distracted because for me that is the main point, right? Like
Yeah,
10 hours is hard when because I'm the same way. Like I will find everything to
every
do.
day.
Everything. Things that I'm like, I don't even know how I got here, but I'm here. And if people can sit with themselves and really realize like most of your time that you're working, you're not working, you're
Not working.
distracted.
Mhm.
And so, how do we plan for those things? And you're speaking a lot around self awareness and getting to know yourself. And so, this wasn't on the list, but I'm curious about your thoughts around how does one do that? I know that's such a large question, but maybe we put it in the context of being in a doctoral program. When you say it's like you need to know yourself, like what things do I need to know about myself in this process?
That's a good question. I think I like when we know better, we do better, I think is not true.
Yeah.
But there are things that we know that in small amounts that we are capable of doing with ease. Um, I used to be an early riser. And so working out in the morning or writing in the morning felt good to me. It felt fine. But that was just, I've always done that, right? So just being in that routine did not feel like I was pushing or trying too hard. It felt like something that is manageable. Um, I only took going back to coursework, I only took courses that I was interested in. Why would I sit down and or pay for a course
Mm,
that someone told me was required, or some professor is teaching and everyone says that they're great, but it's not of interest to me. So I did not take some professors at my college that are fabulous, right? Some
Mhm.
Black women, kind of like stalwarts of the community. I just, because that was not my space, right? As much as I missed learning from them and just being in their presence, I knew that that was not going to be a space that pushes me forward um, to get to the end, whether it's just like the
Mhm.
motivation to do the work that they're requiring, um, the interest in the topic, or their methodology. Um, that's because I was like, this is not me. I want to. It would be good to. It'd be like it would be a key, but
Yeah.
who are you, right? And knowing that I perform best in these places and in these spaces, and this is going to keep pushing me forward. Let's tap into that.
Mm. The other part, I'm curious in this vein of like knowing yourself and being like, I'm going to focus on the things that I want and that's going to help move me forward. I also just have to ask for the people.
Mhm.
How did you do this with two little people? And y'all, I'm not talking about like, oh, we're teenagers and we can go figure it out by ourselves. I'm saying truly little people who are like learning about their emotions and that they can use their words and they have all the energy. Like,
Wow.
how?
I
How
don't
do you
think
have the emotional bandwidth? More is what I'm
I
thinking
don't
about.
know. I think this is one area that my husband and I talk about. Like, I don't know, besides just fact of just doing it, right? I don't
Mhm.
I don't know how we did it. Like, I don't it's one of those things where parenthood just doesn't make sense, and you just kind of you're on autopilot. And that's not good advice, right? But um I knew that the kids and both of them at that stage kind of they had a good routine. So at 7 o'clock they were done. So then after 7 o'clock, I'm gonna do classwork or coursework or whatever. Um, I would say that pushing through and doing it doesn't mean that health wise I'm doing good, right? Because you can't have all the things, right? You can't push through a doc program, have a good relationship with your spouse, be present at everything, work. It's some people may be able to do it, but I don't. And also just find 90 minutes or 60 minutes to go work out, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think I made peace with. I want all the things, but I can't have all the things at the same time. And if I can go out for a walk, I go out for a walk, right? And good job, right? If I needed to spend more time with the kiddos for whatever reason, I would be thinking about what I need to do. But at least I'm physically here. I can do something now with them. And then I can get back to writing later in the evening. So I think just being on autopilot is the way to do it. My advisor also said this: having a network of people who believe in you, right, is so
Yeah.
important. Like my husband, my mom, my mom-in-law, mother-in-law. I don't know if I needed to just write for the whole weekend, somebody would take them.
Mhm.
Um, if I told my husband, like, hey, I need you to have them on Saturdays for this 2-3 month period, so I can just spend Saturdays writing, he figured it out. So I think just making sure that everyone understands, like, and we don't always do a good job of saying out loud what we need. And so I think in hindsight, it's like being articulate and saying, I need this space for this reason. And here's how I can adjust in other areas. But if I can have this space, and if you can help me have this space,
Mm.
then we can move it forward.
Mhm.
I don't think it's possible. Other people do it. Everyone does it based on their situation, but for us, I don't think it would have been possible without the support network.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm probably take this deeper. It's just something that I see a lot, not only in the group but outside the group. And I spent a lot of time. I was just talking to a friend about this of the pressures
Mhm.
of being visible as a woman, right? When people perceive you, right? I am saying how the world perceives you and the pressure that the world could place on you as a woman, as a mother, as a student. And that can often send the message that you're not allowed to ask for help. Like,
Mhm,
and, or maybe some version of a message of like, well, you chose to go get a doctoral degree. We didn't choose that. And so
mhm,
since you chose it, you got to figure out how to do all these things and be all these things and be okay and look a certain way and be in a good mood.
mhm.
Um, and I just want to say, like, you're giving people right now just permission to be like, no, one, that's unrealistic. And two, help. We all need help.
We all need help, right? And we have to be okay asking for it and asking others and or finding the grace to give yourself. I think my son was for a lot of it. My son was here because of was in the house because of COVID. But when my daughter was here, you know, her school had something like every other day. And I'm like, I'm not going to this, right? Like I'm not creating snacks for 25 people because it's St. Patrick's Day, right? Like if you guys want snacks because parents have to bring in snacks once a week, whatever, I'm going to go to Sam's. You're going to get a box, and it's not going to be in a bag. It's not going to have any frills coming out of it. You're going to get the bare minimum, and you are 2, 3, 1 years old. You won't know, right? Like, and so I think just for me as a mom, I don't have this big picture of how I need to show up, right? I need to be here for them and I need to kind of, do all the things where they feel loved. But showing up in the outside world, I'm not concerned about that because they're not going to remember, right? They're going to remember what feels good at home. And so
Mm,
trying to create that space here has always been more important to me because maybe because it happened during COVID, so we missed a lot of that. I don't know.
mhm,
Um, but I'm not the I was not the one who needed to be there at everything. If I have my mom is going to go, or my mom-in-law is going to go, that's fine, right? It could be mommy's day. Yeah, here,
yeah,
one of y'all go. And I think just kind of that space to say, I don't have to be everything to everyone at this point. Like, hopefully, there's an after, and I can show up a little bit more.
mhm,
They're still not getting Valentine's Day gifts across the whole, like, like
right.
I'll bake them a cake or do something at some other point in time that they'll remember. But do you have to, right? What do you have to do? What feels good? And if it's not part of that, then, you know,
Yeah.
everybody else will be okay.
Yeah, I think I've told you this before, but I would say like what I will always one of the things that I will always be grateful when it comes to you about is just like having this example of I know that you deeply love your kids and I know like you are there every day and also balancing that with
Mhm.
you don't need all of that. I'm not performing motherhood.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not gonna do that. Because
Yeah.
I just feel like we need more of those examples because again, those expectations are so unrealistic
Yeah.
and in a lot of ways unnecessary. Because do you have the cookies or whatever you needed or nah? Like, let's just move on.
Let's just move.
You also mentioned like I'm gonna do the bare minimum and that gets to be okay. And that causes a lot of angst when I tell people to do the bare minimum. I guess can you speak more to how you see or understand giving the bare minimum? And is there any like associated like guilt that comes with that or like more around how you give yourself permission to do that?
I think as folks pursuing their PhD, I don't think we're used to giving bare minimum, right? So that's hard, right? Like someone else's like my bare minimum is like what is excellence almost, right? And that sounds a real like so it's I don't know how to give academically what is like I don't know how to give the bare minimum, right? And so being okay with what I do produce and not trying to go above, if that makes sense, right? So the bare minimum is producing good work. The bare minimum is all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, right? The research is well crafted, the argument is well laid out. That for me is the bare minimum.
Mhm.
Um, Going above would be publications. Didn't do that, right? Going above would be the extra stuff that comes along with. being in a program, right? Trying to get in the right lab or trying to network in different spaces. And I
Mm,
think for me, it was, what do I need to do to get the degree versus how do I need to perform as a doc student? And I don't know if that's all the way right or if I'm articulating it correctly either, but the bare minimum was doing A plus work.
mhm.
And for me, that was a lot of, yeah, I spent a lot of time doing it. Coursework was, I'm going to say easy, but,
Yeah.
structured. But like I've always had a good argument, right? I always knew that I needed to produce a good research question and do the right research to feel like I'm doing the bare minimum. I don't, yeah.
Yeah. No, I do like that framing because a lot of too, like similarly where I'm coming from is to tell people like you've been doing this. Like this is not your first time being a student. It's not your first time starting a whole new program. And while it may be your first time, designing research or doing the dissertation part of it, the individual skills required is not your first time. So what if you just show up and do exactly what they're asking you to do and know that that's enough? Because I often see that collectively we can get ourselves into this place where we're like, oh, I'm going to do the research teams and I'm going to go to all the conferences and I'm going to do all the networking. When one, you don't like doing those things.
Mhm.
Two, you have no interest in being in academia or higher ed after
Mhm.
the degree. And even if you do, three, a lot of people still don't want the lifestyle of being at a research one institution or doing
Mhm.
the like constant research. So like, why are we doing these things? If you trust it yourself, or if you can work on trusting yourself and trusting that just following the process as laid out was enough to be a doctor, then I feel like a lot of people just wouldn't do all the extras.
Yeah. I
Right.
think and that's fine, right? Like if that's not the path, and I did not plan on going to an R1 or going into academia, so those were not important for what I saw my path being. And so again, because I had so much going on, I had to be very strategic, right, about what I was going to participate in and the extent to which I was going to participate in it. And so coursework, they say write X number of pages, write X number of pages and send it in. Make sure that you're following what you know to be good academic practice and good academic writing, and send it in.
Yeah.
I would tell everyone, and I was told this by professors also, don't read every page that they ask you to read, right? Figure out what you need to get from a text. Figure out if the text is necessary for your path, right? I think, and this is probably the bare minimum part of, there were courses that were important to me, but
Mhm.
there were sections in the syllabus that was not. And if I was not going to be writing on it for a paper or for additional research, I can participate in the conversation in class. I can show up, I can do those things, but I don't have to read 300 pages on something that I know I'm not going to be working on, right? So I
Mhm.
think that part also is important. Like, know what you're reading, know why you're reading it, and be okay kind of getting the I would say the AI version. We used to say the Cliff Notes version, right? Get the summary of the text that you at least have some knowledge of what the conversation is going to be about.
Mm. Coming back to then dissertation, how would you describe your working relationship with your chair during the dissertation process?
Coming into the program, he very clearly said, like, if you want something from me, you have to ask.
Mm,
And again, that conversation that we just had around asking doesn't feel natural, right? We want people to tell us what to do or to give us the advice that we want, to point us in the right direction, as though they can just read our mind and know what we want. And so in the dissertation process, I think he had the very same posture of like, when you send me something, I'm going to be responsive. I'm going to tell you what you need to do. I'm going to tell you where, I'm going to give you the minor edits, the big picture edits, but you have to send me something, right? I'm not going to ask you for it. I'm not going to put you on a timeline because, this is what a doc program is. You have to be self-directed. Um, and once I sat in that and said,
Mhm.
this is what he said from the beginning, this is how he's going to manage the program. Once you said, just send the email, just send it. And I got the feedback that I needed. Um, I got the support I needed. I realized that just send the email, just ask the question,
Mhm.
just say I'm struggling in this part. And I think it was his responses were fine. I would say that my advisor was what I needed for the whole however many years for the whole
Yeah.
minute. Um, I am not a, cheering you on type of person, so I don't need a cheerleader, right? That's not what I need. Someone to say, you need to do these 5 things. Um, and if it's supposed to be 6 and he missed one, and I say, hey, I think we're supposed to do this. Hey, sure, let's get it done. And so he was very practical, always responsive.
Mhm.
And I never felt like I was on uncertain footing. And I think if that is the key to getting out unscathed, um, I wish everyone could have that type of an advisor.
Mm, mhm, mhm. And I appreciate, right, the honesty too. Like, I wish more chairs, faculty advisors would take the stance of being clear about who they are. And
Yeah,
he's like, listen, I'm not about to chase you. But if you do give me something, I will
I'm
respond
gonna
to you.
be here.
I'm not going to, be the one that's like checking it. Do you need something? It's okay. And that's not from a place of maliciousness. It's a place from being honest. Like, the theme of this conversation is when you know who you are and you know how you show up, then you can give people clear expectations.
Exactly.
Yeah. Being on this
I think
side. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say one weird conversation that I had. I remember the faculty at my school is diverse, but not in my program. So I was in a research measurement statistics and quant space, right? There are not a lot of Black women or even Black men in that space. And based on my topic, I'm writing about Black students, right? My advisors are great, and they all do really great work, and we're very supportive. But there was just a voice that was missing, and so when I raised it, it was like, well, how do I say that I need somebody who is Black? And it's like, well, just say it. And
Mm,
when I raised it with him, he was like, okay, do you have somebody in mind? Right? And I had someone in mind, gave him the name, and he was like, great, sounds good, let's move it forward. And so I think again, just getting out of our head,
yeah.
saying, this is what I need, this is a gap. Um, and I hope like folks who are in that position of power and like gatekeeping, not letting ego, um, you know, stop folks from progressing. And so
Mm,
um, there was also a very clear understanding that if I wanted someone on my committee, he has final say so, and he will let me know, like like in a very professional way, what will not work or what is a little bit iffy in terms of working relationships and responsiveness and stuff. So I think he was also very good about if I were to kind of go in one direction, helping me stay on a path that was going to be successful, right?
mm,
Versus identifying people who may not be as willing to review when you want them to review or provide the useful feedback. And so that was also very good in our relationship.
yeah. Oh, because committees, y'all, that's a whole different
Different conversation.
conversation of like if you get the wrong combination of people together.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, and I just lost my train of thought. I did have a very clear question based on what you said. Oh yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about your work, your dissertation?
Sure. So I did a critical race mixed method study on Black students' representation in dual enrollment here in Georgia. And so I used QuantCrit to just kind of identify proportionality of Black students in dual enrollment at the school level, looking at school characteristics. And then I did interviews with Black students who were in dual enrollment programs. And the main kind of what I wanted to know was, what about the school environment? If we can even identify components that resulted in Black students being underrepresented in schools across the state. And so I've been building on that study question, kind of the whole program of just kind of
Mhm.
speaking to dual enrollment advisors and kind of thinking about policies or practices within the school that either encourage or kind of push Black students out of, or not even invite them into the conversation around dual enrollment.
Mhm. Mm. Um, I'm trying to avoid going down a rabbit hole because as someone is a product of dual enrollment, not in Georgia, but Illinois, like, I'm like, yes, I'm championing for it, but I also have clear memories of how it was presented and
Mhm.
who it was presented to, in my school, and so, what has in general been the response around your work or feedback you're receiving or conversations? Anything that sticks out to you?
It's not in this climate. I'm always kind of, I haven't, if I'm going to talk about it, I got to talk about the critical race part of it, right? And so I think
Mhm.
there's I'm interested in pursuing dual enrollment research and other professionally. Um, I have not pushed my dissertation out. It is embargoed for a while. Just to, it's a weird political environment,
Yeah.
right? And so kind of doing critical race work and publishing with critical race theory as kind of a theoretical framework um, is an interesting space to be in. I think if I continue to be in dual enrollment or thinking about just access to accelerated learning opportunities in schools, my focus will always be on, how is the messaging supporting Black students? What needs to happen so that they realize that all of these opportunities are available to them? It's not that dual enrollment is better than, or
Mhm.
this other program at AP is better than. It's how do we encourage folks to see opportunities and know that they belong in these spaces, know that they can thrive in these spaces. I think just focusing on that piece.
Mhm. And maybe this needs to, maybe it can encourage you to come back to speak more to this topic. But I can hear right now that there's some student who's trying to piece together either their mixed methods or their quant study, and they're trying to figure out how do I bring in critical race theory or maybe even another critical or emerging theory. Um, and maybe their program culture is similar, right? Mostly quant or mixed methods. It's like, how do I do this? How do I like justify doing the work in this way? Or even how do I justify working with Black folks or any like group of people that the culture of the program may not support? And so I'm not asking you to respond maybe directly to that, but just in general, any advice around putting a study together or communicating what the study is and why it's important to study it in this manner.
So I think in the selection process of where you're going to do your doc program, you need to kind of be aware of that, right? Like, what
Mhm.
is the tenor of your program? Or do you have faculty who are if not directly, tangentially doing work where you can make the link between what they're doing and what you're interested in? Um, that sometimes is easier said than done because some of us are place-based, right? So
Mhm.
we're not traveling to the ideal university. We may just want to just do the degree.
Yep.
We are. But I think knowing ahead of time of if there are people who are supportive of your work or supportive of you, then that is one space that you can at least troubleshoot your idea, right? How do you message it? Are these the right questions? Are there 4 or 5 faculty who would be supportive of this type of work? If you are in a space that is, I don't know how you navigate a space that is not supportive of research idea, because it's not going to just be the research, right? It's your
Mhm.
whole being that they're going to be constantly fighting with, right? How you do research, what questions you're asking, who you're pulling in as references and citations. And so I don't know how you troubleshoot or how
Mhm.
you take an idea or a group of people that you're interested in and push it through in a space that is hostile. I don't people do it, um, but I don't know if that is the right thing to do. I
Mm,
don't know if it's like change your idea or don't go. I think that is a personal issue that you have to work through because it's there are spaces where you can push and you can be successful, but at what cost?
mm,
And I it's taxing enough to be successful in a doc program that to have to constantly fight your way through it um, has to be intentional. And so yeah, I don't know what that looks like, but I would say that if
mm,
there's a program that you're interested in, if you're able to find faculty, if not in that program, at least in the school or in other departments that you can use as allies, do so ahead of time. Go to them and troubleshoot your idea, get the right language to make your case, um, and you don't have to stick within your program.
yeah. Listen, that's a whole word right there. Um, I'm gonna add to it just to say when you're checking, you said check to see if there's 3 or 5 faculty who would support your idea. And even if you don't all the way know what your idea is at the beginning, I would say give more information than you think is necessary because what I often see is what students would do is say like, "Oh, this person is doing similar research or they're
Mhm.
doing the same research." And then I'm like, "But
Are
you're
they?
taking a critical lens. So are you doing the same thing?"
Mhm.
Right, you could use the same words and mean them completely different, and I think that's the key that people miss, because I imagine going to your faculty and saying, like, "I wanna study dual enrollment," and you never say anything about critical race theory or being from a critical
Mhm.
lens. That can completely derail the conversation or relationship and the progress that you can make, leaving a very, key section off, and so I'm just saying that to say, yeah, don't assume. Don't
Yeah.
assume that just because someone has similar identities as you, or maybe they have similar life experiences and y'all in a similar topic area, that you're talking about the work in the same way or coming from the same social location. I'll say it
Correct.
that way.
Correct. Correct. And start early. I came in with an idea, but throughout it was kind of like, well, doctor advisor, here's my ideas, right? Here's a paper that you can look through that has three, four, five, 3 paragraphs. Here's what I'm thinking, right? Where do you see red flags? Tell me
Mm,
now, right? We're not at the point where we're doing comps. So tell me now, are there any red flags? Do I need to speak with anybody here? Are you comfortable helping me make this happen?
mm,
And so I think, if it's even if it's early on, just starting to have those conversations with your advisor and with other faculty, like, are they supportive of you?
yeah.
And I think we can sometimes hear pushback and think they're not supportive, right? So just be open to what is being said, right? Are they pushing you to make it stronger and to tighten it up, or are they against the idea? And I think those are two different things. I think we can lean into those who are pushing us to be greater and to think more critically, if you will, about our work. And hear that as being supportive, but we also need to be able to discern when folks are not willing to be
Mm,
supportive.
mhm. And just because they ask you, like, why Black students or why those are valid questions
Valid
that you will
questions.
need to describe and explain in your research. If it becomes something that's repetitive, right? Now
Yeah.
you can start to explore that maybe this is a difference in philosophy and values,
Exactly.
but still, as much as possible, not taking it super personally that there must be something wrong with you or something wrong with your topic.
Yeah.
Um, I also want to say shout out to you because you're probably like one of the few folks that I've seen doing mixed methods that I'm like, now that scope makes sense for a dissertation. Not you trying to do like 3 or 4 or 5 years of work in one study. So that's another reason why I would love for you to, share more about your work and your design, and maybe we
Sure.
can convince you to come to a call to do that. Um, I want to be respectful of time, and so I will go to my last 2 questions. Of one, someone right now is on the fence about it's February, right? They thought like so much more progress was going to happen by this time of 2025, and yeah, we still have a whole year to go. When someone's on the fence about joining, what advice would you give them to help them make that decision?
Do it. I think you can stop. It cannot be for you, right? But if
Mhm.
you're on the fence because you are stuck, if you're on the fence because you kind of you think you can do it on your own, but you're not 100% certain, I say go ahead and just invest in yourself, right? Invest in getting it done. It is if you're trying to do this in a way that is time sensitive, bet on yourself
Mhm.
and invest in the time to kind of get to the end result in a way that is wholesome, that is based on a, a template and a plan that works.
Mhm.
Um, we know how to research and we know how to think critically about the work that we're doing. Planning and coming up with processes is not something that we took a course on. And so if there's someone saying, here is a plan for you to write what you know what you want to write, but to do it in a way that is manageable, right? Go ahead and do it. It it was worth it, right?
Mhm.
It helped me to move faster than I would have had I not joined on at the time that I did. Um, and so just do it.
Mhm. Just do it, and I love that piece. Yeah, no, I love about the planning because 'cause I'm like, yes, our planning strategies can get us so far, but if you've never done a PhD program or doctoral program, or you've never been at this level, like, you need a different planning orientation to planning, I'll say.
Yeah.
Um, if folks wanna follow up with you, what would be the best way for them to do so?
Sure. So I am on LinkedIn, Janelle Clay. You can find me there. That's the best for this conversation. I think that's the best place to find me. And I'm happy to connect with you through your platform or wherever.
Yes. Thank you so, so much for taking the time out of your
Thanks
day
for
to
having
share
me.
with us, and it was an absolute I mean it's joy to have you in the group, and every time, like, I was tickled. I just love your approach to everything, and I just wanna say I'm really grateful for you trusting me to help you with any part of this process, and we didn't get to this part, but I didn't get a chance to tell you this after your defense. It was so well done, like,
Thank you.
it was just very, like, clear, "We're here, don't get out of line, y'all. I'm gonna tell you this things, and we gonna move on." And it was just a beautiful experience, so thank you for allowing me to be there as well.
Well, thank you for this space. I don't know if we have an idea of what we need at the point. And so this Qual Scholars and what you're building, I think is an amazing platform and community for us to kind of really to achieve this dream that we have. And so you're helping us in ways that I don't know if you envisioned, but it
Mhm.
is I say and it's in my acknowledgments whenever that is published, right? But I think, what you're building here is so amazing, and I appreciate you having this
Mm.
community. So thank you.
Yeah, it's, experience, right? Um, Thank you. We definitely will have you back on. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your week. Everyone else, thank you for your time and attention in the middle of a Thursday. I hope this has encouraged you to join us inside of Finish Your Dissertation Institute. If you want to sort of try it out, you can book a dissertation breakthrough session, and we will go through creating a plan for the next 2 weeks and also a plan to set you up for the next 90 days. And that will be a great test to see if that type of support would be helpful for you. So you can go to qualscholars.com/breakthrough and schedule that. I'm going to leave everybody. Thank you.
All right. Thanks,
Hi,
Dr.
y'all.